property tax exemption to volunteer firefighters.
Could you
And
sit there, please?
volunteer.
I got this video here.
Ambulance
Yeah,
work.
that'd be great.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for this public hearing?
I'm in favor of it.
Okay, good. And so we need a motion to adjourn if there's no more comments. All in favor? To close the public hearing. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's my best side.
Can everyone make sure they sign in, please?
Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes from our July meeting? All in favor? All right. Public hearing, firefighters tax exemption. We just had a public hearing on that, and now we need to make a motion to enact that public law. Local law number 1 of 2023. Number 2. So local law number 2, 2023. So moved. Need a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Carried? Okay. Tonight we have a guest speaker, State Assemblyman Jeff Gallahan. I'd like to introduce himself as our new assemblyman. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll stand up here so I can
Yep.
face everyone.
That's fine.
Okay?
That's fine.
Great, thank you. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Gallahan, and I am the representative for the 131st Assembly District, which encompasses 7 different counties from Ontario to Madison and down into Broome County. So seven counties right now and 41 towns, and in the next redistricting that takes effect in 2025, there'll be 6 additional towns in the eastern half of the district, some in Madison and some in Chenango. So for those of you that don't know me, I'll give you a little history of myself. I grew up in Ontario County, born and raised in Ontario County, and I grew up in a little hamlet called Pumpkin Hook. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Pumpkin Hook or not, but that's a whole, I have to go on for an hour and let you know that they got the name and all that. But anyway, it's in the town of Farmington, and it was when I was growing up, Farmington was farm country. It's exploding now, and people are moving in, and Ontario County is a pretty busy county right now. But, so I grew up there. I went to school, Victor Central, graduated, and I married my high school sweetheart. And we'll be scheduled for our fundraiser coming up on our anniversary. But it's okay because we both shoot trap, and it's a trap shooting fundraiser, so that'll be our 45th year. We have 3 children and two children and 3 grandchildren. They live about a quarter mile from our home, which is great. Grandma loves it, and it's a great situation. I started my career off as a journeyman machinist working for General Railway Signal Company. Went through the apprenticeship program back when New York State still had a little money to throw at those programs, and I was fortunate to garner that. Went to Rochester Institute of Technology and became a journeyman machinist. I went on into sales 10 years later, and I'm now still in sales part-time, but I am full-time assemblyman here in 131st. My wife and I are also small business owners. We have a food trailer and a catering business. We've had that since 2017. And we primarily, it's more about my hobby. I drag my wife into it. So some weekends she's kicking and screaming that she doesn't want to go, but she's always there. We try to concentrate on our local nonprofits and different organizations that catering for different organizations that service the community. So if I was out there trying to make a bunch of money, we'd be doing things differently, but we don't. We like to give back. I'm a 31-year member, SAIL member of the American Legion. And I do a lot of work for the American Legion. And I like to hunt and fish. I'm a life member of the National Rifle Association. I'm a member of SCOPE and on the executive committee in Ontario County, and I'm also New York State Rifle and Pistol Association member. My wife and I both shoot trap competitively throughout the state in the Northeast. So we're not catering on the weekends. We're out shooting trap somewhere, and we enjoy that very much. So that's kind of a 30,000 foot level synopsis of who I am and where I'm from, and I'm excited about being the representative for Preble. I've been in your village and town a few times over the last 10 or 15 years, and I knew exactly where we were coming, and met the supervisor not too long ago, and we struck up a nice conversation. So the reason I come to these meetings is I like to have my finger on the pulse. I want to know what's going on in the different towns that I represent, and what better way to figure out what's going on than to come to a town board meeting and listen and pay attention to what folks' concerns are. So I encourage you, if you have any kind of situation you need help with any kind of state situation, please contact my office. My chief of staff is here with me tonight, Alexis Ogra. I also have a director of constituent services, Josh Fahey, back in Geneva. And I think the world of my employees, and I worry all the time that someone's going to try to steal them. So those of you that are in business for yourselves know that feeling, and I can't say enough about my staff. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you have anybody?
We have a stack of cards that you could send out.
Alexis will have, do you have cards with you? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And my office is in Geneva, New York, in Ontario County, on Elizabeth Blackwell. And it's right across from the lake, but I can't see any of the lake from my office. I see the railroad.
Jeff, I just have one question.
Yes.
In New York State right now, well, what do you see as some of the most pressing concerns that we're dealing with, that you're dealing with
Well,
in the assembly?
what I hear mostly from folks is they're concerned about safety. People are generally concerned about safety. And what's happened in our judicial system, or not happening in our judicial system, seems to be the number one problem right now. Number two is people can't find employees. They're having a heck of a time finding employees, and they're cutting their hours. Businesses are cutting their hours, and some of them are closing because of lack of employment. They can't find anybody to come to work. There's a host of different things that I could speak on. But those are the big two right now that are really bothering people. You know, the infrastructure is declining in our state. We're not putting enough money in the roads and bridges. We have mental health issues. We lock people up for 2.5 years. We turn them loose into society, and we're closing all kinds of mental institutions and not doing a service to the folks that need that help. The governor did put some money into the budget this year, which I was grateful to see for the mental institutions and people, but it's just been neglected for so long, and you know, it's a sad state of affairs in some areas. I mean, it's affecting our children. Kids are having a hard time in school. They're behind 1.5 years, some of them, and they're having a heck of a time catching up. So, you know, the rural fight is on constantly. We're not recognized like we should be by the folks from the southern part of our state, and we're trying to educate them on a constant basis as to what our wants and needs are here in upstate. You know, we live a totally different lifestyle than they live in Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx, and they need to visit us, and we need to visit them, so that we can come together in the middle and try to govern our state. So,
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Okay, thanks.
well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. And,
Jeff, hold
I'm excited about being here. I'm
Jeff,
sorry.
just hold on a minute. So, as you know, is the county. So, for those that don't know me, I'm Chairman Fitch of the legislature. And so, you know, we're working on our budget, and the impact that we receive by the state budget, we now have to come up with around $3.3 million off the top for that. One being
Like the reimbursements.
the FMAP is one of the bigger ones. So as part of her budget, she was phasing out. So they're giving us a little bit now, So FMAP is Medicaid, so everyone knows. And the way that the state has the budget is that the state has taken the 628 million and they put it in their coffers. It used to be a reimbursement. So the county, we're roughly about 1.3 million that we pay out as taxpayers, and then we get reimbursed for that. And the state or the governor decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. So they're phasing this out. So my question to you is that they have it on a 3-year phase out. So what do you see? Because it's a yearly budget,
Right.
And it's not a calendar budget. It's a fiscal year budget. So really, it's a
That they
twofold.
can't pass on time.
Right. So really, it's a twofold thing. Do you see in the next year's budget that this could fail again? And they might be, because right now you're hitting 628 million this year. 3 years down, it's over 800 million. And that's affecting every single county in New York State.
It's
Off the top.
770 million next year projected.
Yeah. So, you know, what would you say to us about a 3-year phase out on a 1-year budget?
They're looking for money, revenue sources from anywhere they can grab. If you look at the comptroller's report that came out, I don't know, when did it come out, Alexis? 2 months ago? Projected a $9 billion deficit in 2 years. 9 billion, billion. We have a $229 billion New York State budget right now, of which I voted no. 229 billion. That's larger than Florida, Texas combined. So they're looking for money anywhere they can scratch, dig, and claw. I see this 770 million next year being a reality, unless she can capture the reimbursement that she's after from the federal government. Then it'll be a different story, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're going to have to hold on to our bootstraps and be prepared for this to continue over the next 2 years.
Because for the county, so for every 368,000 that we increase, that's a 1%. And when we're looking at a 3.3% tax increase, I mean that's a chunk of that's 9%.
That's far and above over the 2% that they require you to.
That's right.
Yeah, so now you're going to have to do a tax cap override.
Yep.
Residents aren't going to be happy with you.
No, and now we have to do some creative thinking.
Yeah, but it just, their inadequacies fall on you. That's what's happening, and it shouldn't be that way. The minority conference, we fought and debated that to the end, and we hear nothing about it, and it passed. And and then they had the audacity to say that the $229 billion wasn't going to affect taxpayers in any way. Wait a minute. You're here telling me different today, aren't you?
Yes.
And we were there telling them different that day, that same day. But it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. I'm very conservative, and I mean, with my own account, I pull my cash out of my pocket many days to pay for things that I don't have to. But I beat my head against the wall down there because the reality of the whole situation is, I wish I'd have bought stock in U-Haul 10 years ago, because people are moving out of our state in droves. Over 1,000 people a day are moving out of New York State. So it's to me, this is a crisis to me. Looking at the comptroller's report, $9 billion in debt. Looking at what's happening to every county in the state, 60 plus counties in the state. Looking at every single county is gonna lose this reimbursement money. And where's it gonna come from? Every single person in this room has got to pay that. Every single person. So we need to start making noise. We need to start getting vocal. I think this silent majority is starting to wake up, to be honest with you. And that's what we need. We need people shouting from the rooftops, enough is enough.
Mhm.
There's
So my
there's power in numbers.
recommendation would be, is for you, Anna Kellis, to really, we're gonna send you our budget. And I think you should take every counties that's your representative and look at that. So then when it comes to budget time, that they see it, because we're worried 2 years down of what it's gonna happen.
Absolutely. That 9% is compounded now. The 662 million you're talking about is 770 and then it's over 800.
Yeah.
So you're looking at almost a 30% increase.
So thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Thank you. And it's an honor and a privilege to represent you. And like I said, if there's anything that's going on that you need help with, please reach out. We'll help you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great meeting.
Okay. Jen?
Dog control, no report received. Justice report, no report received.
Jeff, highway report?
Yes, hello. It's the other morning I knew it was getting a little short on the time when I got to the shop, and then night lights were still on, so it's dark early in the morning. But just everybody sees it. Week and a half ago on a Saturday, we got that 1.8 inches of rain in about hour and 20 minutes. That up on our seasonal gravel roads took us about 6 days to fix what that hour and 20 minutes did. A lot of water, and it's not the one-time event. It seems to be compounding, so it's become problematic. We did oil and stone 8 roads a few weeks ago, and then we've been working on some other roads down back, and we'll be doing some paving here in the next less than a week. So things are moving along pretty well. And I did get a note from Corey, the Viking salesman, and he's still saying the very end of this month. So I'll hold his feet to the fire. It's been since March on that. Any questions for me? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. County legislator?
Well, yeah, we pretty much just, so we weren't in session July. So August is now come upon us. And I do have to say, if I can look at it right here. So we will be approving here next Thursday sales tax for the second quarter. And you'll be receiving $146,886, which is an increase from last year, roughly about 2%. And that's, well, you're seeing it, is gas prices going up. So there's that. So the budget, all of our departments in the county have submitted all of their preliminary budgets. So we are taking a look at that. We did have some union contracts that we did approve, and we have one more that we will be approving. If anybody has been looking or wants to look at the courthouse, the stairs are getting almost done. They're pretty much taken care of, and that was under the grant. And we are still worried, Mr. Assemblyman. So we are still worried. So the DEC decided in their wisdom to be the forefront of PFAS chemicals. And these are chemicals that don't break down or whatever. So what they ended up doing was they did a proposal for the landfills. So there's 25 landfills in the state of New York. And what they are proposing, and they gave them a 3-week window for comment, which pretty much states that it's a done deal. is that all waste generated at the landfill stays in the landfill. What that is the leachate. So that is the decomposition of the stuff that goes into liquid, and it goes into our lagoons that we have, and then we truck that to the city's wastewater treatment plant for treatment. And then we, in return, receive all the sludge that comes for that, puts it in a landfill. So we are roughly, last year was about 1,800 tractor trailer loads that we have. What this means is that it has to stay at the landfill. Their proposal is for us to solidify that with concrete. What that does is that takes the lifespan of our landfill and cuts it in half to right now about 6 years. And it will cost us roughly about $800,000 to get the porter mix, materials, all that, to put that in there. The problem is that we are required by law to collect 20 years after the landfill is closed. And if it's closed, we can't put it anywhere. So we're really confused on why the state DEC is looking at something like this. It's almost like the cart before the horse. But again, we're looking at roughly $800,000 in cost, and this would be enacted to be in place by 2025. So we have to really take a look at, what has to happen. And for us to get approval for a new cell to be put in place, we're looking at about 10 years to get the approval, to get everything taken care of. So the county is now really taking a look at what do we do and what do we do with county waste. So that's a stay tuned type of thing for that. Other than that, with not having any meetings, we're in pretty good shape.
Anybody have any questions for Kevin?
Just a quick
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't heard about the concrete solution. Sounds a bit crazy, but is there a way to look at that and comment? Is it on the DEC site, or is this just going to municipalities?
It went to municipalities, all the associations for landfills. So they're the ones that are soil and water took a look at it. And, that's as far as we can go. One of the things, we're going to really take a look at is, how to expand or I shouldn't say expand, but keep it longer, the lifespan of that. So we will probably be putting more in place alternatives. We're seeing this in Madison County, Tompkins County, where we just have to really take a look on how we can reduce some of the waste that goes in there.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Kevin? Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Jen?
Zoning and code enforcement July report. 4 building permits issued, 1 roof permit, 87 miles traveled, 11 building inspections, 64 hours worked, 1 fire inspection, 11 complaint follow-ups, and 28 telephone inquiries. The next planning board meeting is August 23rd at 7 p.m. The next ZBA meeting is September 7th at 7:30 p.m. No report received from the historian. Town clerk fees collected in July, $273. Dispersed $262 to the town of Preble and $11 to New York State Ag and Markets.
Thank you, Jen. Now we'll go into unfinished business. First item is letter in support of voter ID. Don, can you comment on that?
Right, it's come due tomorrow.
Okay,
That's what we're gonna issue.
okay. Next is LED street lighting. Jim?
We sent that letter into National Grid,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So we're waiting for, I haven't heard anything on my end.
I have not either, no.
So we're waiting for a reply. So we sent them a request to do it.
Okay, so you don't have a schedule for them yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so we'll just keep on top of
It's
this
coming.
every month. Next item, firefighters tax exemption. That was a public hearing that we had at the beginning of this evening. And we already made a motion for that, so that's done. Next is comprehensive plan. We're just talking about comprehensive plan. We are updating it and revising it along with our zoning code. So Don, can you make a comment on, where we're at with that? And
Sure. So there were a couple of questions raised at the last meeting. One was reference to some of the language in the proposed changes by the planning board in the comprehensive plan relating to short-term rentals. There was a reference to potential loss of tax and licensing revenues. And although I think there was some, we talked with the planning board meeting about that. I really think what that relates to, I don't think it's worded properly, but I think what that really relates to is if there is regulation put in place, there's going to be increased cost to the town for enforcement. And so the concern was, how does the town recoup or address that? And then the other was, I think the question was whether the reference to that there ought to be enforceable regulations. Again, this is in the proposed comprehensive plan that the board has had for the last couple of months. Could include prohibition, and I don't need to speak for the board members specifically, but I think it could include that, but they indicated that that type of decision is ultimately with the town board. So having said that, we do have this proposed comprehensive plan, and I think the next step in the process would be for this board to have a public hearing on the comprehensive plan. And again, the comprehensive plan is what sets forth the roadmap, if you will, for development or lack thereof, and the future vision for the town for the foreseeable future.
So after the hearing, then we would, as a board, we would analyze it and add or subtract whatever,
You could
and
make
send it back
changes.
to the planning board.
You could send a plan back to the planning board, or you could have an additional public hearing, but ultimately, it's something that would need to be adopted by this board.
Is that comprehensive plan available for citizens to review?
Sure it is. Public record.
Didn't find it on the website.
I'm not the website master, Joe.
Did we
I
get
didn't
that
think
on
you
the-
were.
Yeah, because I looked today and it wasn't on there. I couldn't find it. So that way everybody can get it.
Yeah, it's gotta be available.
And review it.
those questions that we had, we just went over those two questions. Are they gonna revise the wording in that so it's more clear,
Yeah, I think they were,
like at the next planning board meeting?
I think they were deferring to the town board,
Okay,
is what my read of their reaction was. In other words, they did not propose any specific change. And they recognize that this is a recommendation from the planning board to the town board. So the town board is free to modify.
So could we add add and subtract what we want to do before, and then we could post the original one from the planning board, and then we could add or subtract to that, and then post that as a town board
You could.
revision
But you might,
prior to the public hearing.
better, you can do it after, you can have your public hearing and then
Maybe we ought to do
with that
that.
input,
We
then
get the input, and then, okay. Yeah. So we can schedule a public hearing now for the motion.
Mhm. We should probably schedule it for right before the next board meeting. We can schedule it for September 11th on Monday. 7 o'clock. Then we'll have the board meeting right after public hearing. Is that okay with everybody?
Are you
Yes.
gonna have the public hearing in this room, or are you gonna have a
Yes.
space that might be a little bit bigger in case you get more people?
Well,
Okay,
I don't know where
Just
else we
asking.
could have it. Jeff, any ideas?
I can check fire department schedule if you thought there was gonna be more than about what's here tonight, so.
Take the table down. Get more in here.
Okay. So we can schedule a public hearing for 7 o'clock. And we'll have it here as of right now. Because people going out the door to the sidewalk, we'll have to move over to the fire department. So we need to make a motion for the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to have a public hearing for the comprehensive plan adoption, September 11th, 7 p.m.
All in favor?
Aye.
Harry? Okay. Now, we have another item here for unfinished business, short-term rental, and that's the topic which kind of dovetails into the comprehensive plan. So, do we want to talk about short-term rental now? As a board, as far as, Jim, maybe you can start us off?
Yes, before, in our last meeting, it was brought up, from a taxpayer about, the process and how long this was gonna take to determine if the town board was going to, do nothing, regulate it, or prohibit it. And so I brought up that because of the length of time that it may take, that we should place a moratorium, or we could place a moratorium on it. And we have, the town of Preble has done other moratoriums, at least that you agreed with. So at this time, I feel that we should place a moratorium on it. And today we've gotten a petition from the citizens of Preble, which just emailed to this afternoon, and Jen printed them off. So, Tarky, Heath sent this, and if you would like to get up and read your letter at this time, or do you want me to read it?
You
Or?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a public comment time. I think
Yeah,
we
do
should
you want
wait
to
for
wait
that.
till then?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I'll wait till then I can wait till then to read it, but, or I can read it now and we can talk about it.
Yeah, if you want to read it, you
I'll
can
read it now, yeah, okay. Petition citizens of the town of Preble for a moratorium on short-term rentals in residential Lakeside 1 R1L in the town of Preble, dated August 14, 2023. Whereas a group of property owners have met and discussed their concerns regarding the unregulated short-term rentals, as well as the purchasing and building of short-term rentals in R1L zones. That was number one. Number 2 point is whereas short-term rentals have become increasingly popular in recent years, with platforms like Airbnb and VRBO making it easy for property owners to rent out their properties to travelers. Number 3, whereas short-term rentals can be a convenient option for both hosts and guests, it also presents some significant changes for neighbors, communities, and natural resources. 4, whereas short-term rentals in our small communities are increasing, and while some issues of noise, overcrowding, unsafe, or belligerent behaviors are not always reported, they do occur. 5, whereas many concerns resulting from short-term rentals can be addressed with reasonable regulations, ensuring the hosts are following all applicable laws and regulations, including zoning restrictions and safety codes. 6, whereas licensing short-term rentals would provide a way for local governments to track the number of properties being rented out on various platforms. 7, whereas the requirement to obtain a license, the town would contribute revenues which can contribute greatly to small community planning and offset enforcement costs. 8, whereas occupancy taxes may also be collected, providing an important revenue stream, especially for a small community. 9, whereas residential Lakeside 1 R1L is zoned residential, and those short-term rentals that are built or purchased for that purpose only are business enterprises. 10, whereas lakeside communities face additional issues of aquatic invasive species, boating accidents, and septic system issues. 11, whereas our small lakes are currently experiencing stress from a variety of natural and human-induced impacts with a limited carrying capacity for development. 12, whereas local governments and other communities similar to ours have developed and adopted reasonable requirements designed to ensure that septic systems can handle increased loading. Contamination of the lake from invasive species is properly prohibited, or to eliminate issues from improper off-site parking. 13, whereas the town of Preble has yet to complete and confirm its comprehensive plan, which may help the town address short-term rentals with more clarity. And 14, whereas requiring licensing for all short-term rentals will help ensure that these properties are being operated safely and responsibly now, therefore be it resolved. Therefore, these town of Preble residents urges the town board to 1, to explore options, especially as developed by other towns with lake access, for a local law to adequately address short-term rental concerns. 2, to enact a moratorium on short-term rentals in the building or purchasing of properties for the purpose of short-term rental within R1L zone lots for 6 months. And it's signed, or names of 9 citizens, taxpayers, landowners. This date, August 14th.
Okay, so that's a petition by the residents of the town of Preble asking for those things. What do you propose that we do, Jim?
I propose that we enact a moratorium, so it gives us time to study if we do nothing, if we regulate or we prohibit. So we can put together our plan as a board to accumulate this information and what it would take to regulate it and how it would impact our town and our code enforcement officer if he can handle such a thing. Or 3, if we prohibit it, gathering all the information on all these other towns that have done so. Liverpool just did it on July 25th. It was in the Post Standard.
So with a moratorium, that would prevent people from renting anything out?
Can you relate to that, Dan?
Well, that's a question in my mind, what exactly would be the impact of such a moratorium?
And can we enforce it?
Right.
That's the big question. Enforcement. Are we prepared to enforce something like that?
You don't have you can't take any action tonight. You have no proposed local law in front of you. If you direct me to research and draft such a proposed local law, I think that's what you do this evening.
it would take a local law to enact the moratorium.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't do that by
So
resolution.
would then, well, we already established a public hearing. Public hearing, would that be a public hearing on that local law or the moratorium or both?
The moratorium would be through form of local law, so you'd have to follow the local law enactment process. You have to refer it to county planning, and you have to have a public hearing.
We can start that process and Don can make a draft of that local law. We need a resolution to have you do that, right?
Right.
I'd like a motion to have a resolution for Don to pursue that local law, moratorium, enacting the moratorium on short-term rentals.
So this will take some time. This is not gonna happen right away.
That's why the moratorium.
But, right, even the moratorium, the
Even the
wheels,
moratorium,
the
getting the
wheels
moratorium.
can start. And if there's snags along the way, we're gonna have to deal with them. So Jim makes a motion for Don to write up a draft for the moratorium. Anybody want to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, carried. So next month, we'll have a draft from Don to that moratorium.
Yep.
And then ultimately, we'll have to vote on it as a board, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that may or may not pass. We'll read through it and we'll see it and we'll listen to everybody and we will go from there. Just, making sure everybody's on the same page with this. Okay, any other questions on this petition from the board? Because we do have a board member who's absent tonight. And so we'll have to brief him on what occurs tonight. But he'll have a vote also on this. Any other questions from the board on this? We'll continue it next month. Okay. Okay, next item of business is new business. This is the Frank Surratt letter. Everybody got a copy of that Frank Surratt letter? And I assume that you read it. Maybe you have some comments on it. I talked to Don about this letter, and this letter is about the farm trucks hauling manure on Preble Road, where they were going down Curry Road, I believe, and because the work being done on the bridge over 81 is occurring, there's a 3-color light there, and the drivers of these trucks don't want to wait for the light to change, so they want to take a different route. And one of our residents does not like the fact that the trucks are going by his house. So I talked to Don, I talked to Jeff about it. Jeff, do you have any comments on this? You want to make any comment?
Not really.
Okay.
It's, there's B&T law, but as far as, they're registered vehicles, and unless you create a truck route, and that road is more likely to be a truck route than the route that they're using truck route criteria. So I see it being a slippery slope as far as you might think you're fixing it, you might make it worse.
Mhm.
And the other catch is someday that bridge is going to be fixed or behind schedule, but and then they would normally, use their normal route again. This is, there's some extenuating circumstances that I see that are causing this right now.
Mhm. Which this could be just a temporary situation, and it gets back to normal after that bridge is fixed. And the other thing I see is that I'm not sure if it's really a town issue, because this is a county road that runs by here. And I'm not sure what the town really can do about it. Don, you wanna make a
No,
comment on this at all?
I agree, maybe temporary in nature. And again, it's a county road and we don't have a lot of control over that. If you recall, we tried to reduce the speed on this road. And after we studied, DOT said don't go, so, you know, it's not our call. We could certainly try and initiate some review and so on, but it's ultimately, I don't think it's our call.
Right, right. Now, Mr. Surratt is more than welcome to come to a town board meeting and discuss it with us and make a comment and ask questions or whatever. And we do have his letter on file. We acknowledge it. We acknowledge his concerns. But
Might send it down to the county highway
Mhm.
department. Just for
Mhm.
the information.
But there's nothing that we're immediately going to do as a town board that's gonna stop manure trucks from going by.
Can I comment?
Yes,
I live on this road. And yes, they go by. What do you expect from the farmers? I get more down my end than they do up this end, and it doesn't bother me. It's only seasonal and they're over with. In the winter, you don't have any. I have tractor trailers coming in from both ways. But it doesn't bother me. I'm just used to it. Same as the train going by. You hear the train, you get used to it. And I live up down here from Frank Surratt. That doesn't bother me.
thanks for your comment, Diane. Okay, so that resolves that for tonight. The last item on new business is somebody wrote to Jen and to me, and he wants to use a metal detector to go through the park to find things, historical objects, diamond rings, money, whatever he wants to find. But he's asking the permission from the board if he can walk through the park with a metal detector. Now,
And everything he turns into Preble.
so, people walk through state parks with metal detectors. They walk through beaches and national seashores with metal detectors, and nobody stops them. I don't know what really to think about this with somebody, but I just wanted to run it by the board, because if somebody says, hey, who's that guy with the metal detector out there? Who gave him permission to walk around the park? I just want to make sure that people on the board are aware of this, and I have to call him back and say yay or nay to him. Give
Did you
some kind of
talk to him about this?
Not yet, no.
Because he mentioned to me that he would like to also do it here at the town hall. And he mentioned that he would want to dig holes 4 to 6 inches down to be able to do what he wants to do.
Can't really do that in ball fields or somebody could trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a liability to us.
And what's the upside for the town of Preble to allow him to do
What he
this?
did say, whatever he found, he would turn over to the town. He would just ask to take pictures of what he found for his own records.
I don't really see a lot of upside for the town of Preble in this. So, does anybody have any comments on the board here? Done?
Well,
I think it's a good idea.
We don't have any rules prohibiting someone walking on in the park with a metal detector.
Mhm. Right?
So if you never asked, I think you wouldn't be running us awry of any rules to do that. I think certainly digging up the ground is a different issue.
Yeah. That'd be a good,
But he has to dig up the ground, because if he finds something, he's
That's
gonna start
right.
digging, right?
Come to the territory.
So, I should call him back and I should tell him that we're just not interested in his proposal. Mhm. Okay,
Yeah, that replaces theirs.
One quick question.
Yeah.
I live up on Song Lake, and I can magnet fish into the lake to pull out any metal out of the lake. Do I need permission to do that? Because I'm just trying to clean up like if there's any metal or anything in the bottom. Just pull it. I just pull it out.
no, we don't have any laws about that.
Just trying, I didn't even think that would be an
It'd be
issue.
a
So I'm
DEC issue.
really.
Anything with the water.
You have a
is,
license?
DEC.
That's a good question.
I wanted out of the water.
Okay, any other questions about this topic? All right, so next, monies received, we received $779 from USPS. And so now we're done at this time with, we're done with our unfinished business and our new business. We'd like to open up the meeting for public comment, questions, whatever we want to talk about. Yes, Starkey?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I work across the state with different lake associations in different towns, and they've enacted reasonable regulations on short-term rentals because they're an issue. And they really are especially an issue for lakes because we have carrying capacity issues. We're already being inundated with invasive species and a whole host of natural and also man-made things that are harming our lakes. And when we get to that point where we can't use our lakes, you guys lose tax base too. So I'm just reading that up. Don, this is for you. It is a list of those towns, villages, and so forth that have enacted reasonable regulations. Because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. This is all over the country and certainly with our lakes.
No, and actually, just so you know, the planning board, in a rough form, really used the Canadice template. And so they put that rough draft together. So there has been, some work by the planning board.
Geneva just enacted some as well. So just looking at your region there, so. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's some really good guidance, I think, and it shouldn't be that hard, so that's really good. Not that anything is that easy when you're talking about people, wanting to
Right.
do what they want to do.
Right.
But thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes?
I'll speak up for a second. My name is Colleen. Nice to see you all. I live up the road. I'm the president of the Tully Lake Property Owners Association. And very frequently, we keep an eye on our sister Kettle Lakes to see what has to happen to continue to be really good stewards of the lake. But that's not why I was going to chat. I am an Airbnb person. I have rented my house on Tully Lake and also a property that I have in Florida. And I bring it up today because you talked about enforcement. If you do it the way that many communities are doing it, there's a licensing or registration process that happens once you put regulations in place. There was an inspection of my home that hadn't happened before these regulations happened in Florida. And then there was a travel and tourism tax that went to the county, in addition to one that was reported to the state. Before that, it was all kind of quiet. And it did generate a fair amount of funding for our community. And I'm just going to share this because my kids have friends on Song Lake, and there's a property there that has been sold multiple times in the last couple of years that is now exclusively an Airbnb home. And they get $5,000 for 3 days. That's pricey. These are large places. When I was renting, people would come up to go to Cornell graduation. They would ski the mountains around here. It wasn't just summer traffic. So I think that the notion of looking at putting reasonable boundaries around regulating this isn't something that you should say it will be a burden to make sure that these are fair and enforced. But I think if you do it well and thoughtfully, I think that the income that you could generate from it, if it's done the way other places are doing it, could assist in making sure the poor person that's got to go out and check the houses has enough support to make sure that it happens. And I know that even when you do everything right, something can happen. But at least it provides structure so that going forward, I can tell you, it changes the character of your community if your area becomes the bachelor party place. And if you have a small area of 90-foot frontage and I'm your neighbor, my life will change and we may consider moving. And then would you want the house next to the 2 party houses? So it really is something that will impact all of these small Kettle Lakes. And so it's worth thinking about. And I just share that with you as a person that sees it from multiple perspectives.
Dan, can I ask you, so
Sure.
do you have a residence or a cottage on
Tully Lake.
Tully Lake?
I live on Tully Lake.
So that's in the town of Tully?
Yes,
Is
but
that the Airbnb you refer, the short-term rental, or is that in Florida?
I have both. Both of my houses, when I wasn't in Florida, I was renting my house on Tully Lake. And then when I was in Tully, I was renting my house in Florida.
Does Tully have regulations?
Florida is regulated. Tully is part of it. Right now, no. So that's why I'm kind of scoping this out, because we just did our comprehensive plan. We still have some other things that have to be kind of tightened up. But right now, it is being addressed at the lake level and not at the county level or our town level. So I think it's worth looking at. You're welcome.
Hello, my name's Brody Smith. I'm an attorney at Bonshak and King, and I represent a couple property owners on Song Lake that have short-term rental properties. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to your board on behalf of my clients. I'm going to try to be quick. I know this is the end of the agenda, but I'm just going to hit 4 points quickly. And I'm happy to speak to any of you for as long as you want about any of these issues. And I'll leave my contact information if that's something that you would like to do in the future. So first on the moratorium, I've been a town and village attorney for 15 years, and I've written more than a few moratoriums. Cell tower moratoriums, fracking moratoriums, solar moratoriums, and in every single instance, moratoriums are to stop something new from beginning, so you have time to craft carefully worded regulations in anticipation of this new land use activity. Here you have a land use activity that's legal and it's been going on for generations. People have always rented their homes before Airbnb and VRBO. Is something that families have done to help pay taxes. So the awkwardness of a moratorium is, instead of stopping something that is going to happen before you create regulations, you would be stopping something that has already been happening. You'd be extinguishing an existing property right. You'd be committing a taking without compensation. So moratoriums for activities like that are very susceptible to problems. And I would encourage you very much talk to your attorney about it, executive session, whatever you think is appropriate. But that is a potential pitfall to declaring a moratorium on an activity that's ongoing. Especially, I haven't heard any discussion of any kind of exemptions for existing activity. If you were to pass a moratorium to prevent the expansion of it, okay, well that's something different. But to stop properties that are already doing it, that's taken. Second issue I want to talk about was money. There's been a lot of discussion tonight about taxes. So right now, every Airbnb, VRBO, the other websites, the occupancy tax goes to the county, and that's automatically deducted by the websites. It's not optional. It's not like, homeowners decide to do it. Right now, this activity generates significant occupancy tax for the county. It also creates value in properties. So to neighboring property owners that don't have lake property, by virtue of the fact the assessments are enhanced on these, income generating properties, lowers everybody else's ad valorem real property tax a bit. And then finally, I think it's important to look at the benefits to the individuals. These are your constituents. These are people who contribute to your community. And this is, like I said, for many families, this is how they pay their taxes. For multi-generational residences, these are people who, because it was legal, set up small businesses, and this is how they support themselves. And it should not be prohibited lightly, because this is people's livelihood and this is their property. The third point I wanted to make was some of the legal pitfalls in regulating this activity. Oftentimes, when looking at regulating short-term rentals, an issue is prior existing uses. Again, if there had been no legal prior existing uses, this would be more simple, right? But the fact that it's legal now and people are already doing it, it's the same thing that if you had a gas station and you zoned out gas stations in that area, and you go to the gas station and saying, sorry, you're not a gas station anymore, that's a taking, right? That's a taking without due process of law, that's a taking without compensation. Well, you have the same problem, prior existing use problem, with short-term rentals. Again, I don't see as many legal issues with preventing new ones, But in terms of trying to extinguish the rights of people who already do it, you run into that issue. And this is not a controversial legal subject. Again, I encourage you to speak to your attorney in executive session. You look at the Toys R Us versus Silva case in 96, Marzella in 87. You've got the Miller case going all the way back to 1952. I'm not going to list cases to you because who cares, right? But legal prior existing uses is not a controversial part of New York law. It's a part of New York law that accompanied the first zoning and land use regulations, right? The legal prior existing uses have to be respected. So the last subject I wanted to talk about is, well, what do you do about it, right? People have expressed concerns. People have, in good faith, come to you and asked you to look into this issue. What I've seen work in other communities is to begin with, instead of trying to legislate by anecdote, maybe try to gather some data. And my clients who I've talked to, these are not people who own houses and are foreign to the community. Each of them have their home that they live in year round, and then they have a rental home right next to it. If there are any complaints, if there are any problems, they are easy to find. They are easy to report to. They've gotten no complaints, right? So what do you do as legislatures? Thirsting for data. I've seen work in other places. My suggestion would be to create a voluntary registry and have people, my clients would be the first in line to say, this is where I have a short-term rental. This is my phone number if you receive a complaint, and begin gathering data. And then you could make an informed decision. If there are lots of complaints, if it's not just anecdotes, if there's a pattern of land use abuses, well, then you have a better sense of what to do. But given the paucity of any sort of data for you to, legislate based upon, I think it puts you in a tough spot. The other thing, that I think is relevant is in other places, and I know from having represented communities where you have these houses where nobody lives and there's no connection to anybody in the community. That's the bachelor party people are talking about. That's the problematic property, right? What's not a problematic property is where you have the owners next door or on site, and you have the ability to contact them if there's an issue, and you have a direct line between them and the codes office, and you have cooperation, not confrontation. So to the extent that you do end up deciding to regulate this, I think it's very wise to consider regulating that kind of activity in a different way than a home that's owned by a foreign company like Flipkey or something that has nobody to respond to complaints, nobody to keep an eye on the property, no one to protect the community from those sorts of negative impacts. So you've indulged me with a lot of time. I'll stop right there. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you at any time.
Thanks for coming. Joe?
I appreciate those comments. We had a very impromptu meeting in our house yesterday about this problem because the count was 9 short-term rentals already on Song Lake. That's about 10% of the property already. The ones that are owned by people right next to them are definitely a different class. But there are many on Song Lake already that are owned by corporations, people that aren't here. One elder gentleman said he had 12 different cars at the place next to him over the weekend. This is a very serious problem for homeowners. It's not something that I really hope the board can take a hard look at. I think there's a very different set of circumstances, as the gentleman just explained. And the moratorium would be aimed at no new places for the time being. It's going to take a while, I think, to sort out the legal issues as to whether or not this is a legal conforming use, because there's clearly case law that says it isn't. R1L, single-family homes. These are not single-family homes. There's at least one court, it's an appellate division from the second department, I think, that has said that they're not. So we're not trying to shut down the current ones yet. We want to stop them. And if there has to be 2 different sets of regulations for whether or not there's somebody here or not, That's a good suggestion. This is a serious problem. It's growing. And if you live somewhere and all of a sudden you had 12 cars parked next to you, first of all, there's no place to park 12 cars on most lots on Song Lake or any of these lakes. Some of these lots are 50 feet wide. We have a lot next to us that's 50 feet wide, and we think our neighbor may be thinking of an Airbnb. It's not a good situation. It needs to be regulated. That's what we really want you to think about. That's why we're here. And it's not just somebody making. This is an income supplement to people that may not need the income. And yes, people have rented for a long time. Before I bought on Song Lake 35 years ago, I rented places on different lakes for a week at a time. It's a very different situation in 1 or 2 days. And so the moratoriums are against anything shorter than a month. It's not a blanket, you can't rent your house. So let's take a careful look at this, as the gentleman suggests. And we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe. In the back?
Yes, hi, my name is Michelle Vaith. I'm here with my husband, Pete Thorman. We both live on Song Lake, and we are also Airbnb hosts. My husband, my family is from Central New York, and while I lived in Ohio for a number of years, which is where I met and married my husband, we bought our place on Song Lake, which is our primary residence, in 2016. My husband was a professional firefighter in Ohio, but I had a job opportunity here in Central New York that brought us back to the region, and we were very excited to be back closer to family. We fell in love with Tully. We fell in love with Song Lake. And the property next door to us came up for sale in 2017. And we were very excited to even be able to afford to buy it. It's very small. It was for sale for essentially land value because of the state that the property was in at the time. And so we purchased it with the idea of having friends and family be able to enjoy the lake with us. Now, what we did not anticipate was the difficulties that my husband would have in finding employment as a professional firefighter in the region. And this is difficult for me to talk about, especially in a public setting. And so over the course of from 2017 to 2018, while Pete got his certifications in New York State and looked for work and applied to every local department and did not find opportunities, we suddenly realized that probably that was not going to happen. And so we had bought the property next door, and after just talking to each other as husband and wife, we said, you know what, maybe that chapter has closed to be a professional firefighter, and maybe it's time to be a host, to try being an Airbnb host. And so we live next door to this property that I was describing. We fixed it up. We made the investments in it to do so. This property also happens to be the property that is adjacent to Mr. Harris's property as well. Pete, I have seen Pete really flourish and enjoy building his own business. And it is his only source of income currently. So thank you for letting me tell our story so that we can put a bit, hopefully, to my fellow citizens, I hope it puts a bit of a human face. We are not a large company, and a moratorium or some kind of a full ban would send us back to the drawing board in terms of opportunity for someone who left a very noble profession to come and join his wife and live closer to her family in Central New York. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, Pete Thorman,
Okay.
Michelle Vaith, my wife. For anyone looking and concerned about what could be coming forward, I highly recommend looking at Canadice's regulations because they directly speak to parking as an issue and providing proper parking on a spot and things of that nature to make it more clear that you have to have a proper place for what you want to lease out. Okay. So I highly recommend going onto Canadice's site and looking at the language that they have in there because some of the things in there are very relevant and are not anything outrageous to expect from a host to do and could be easily in done basically. And so also you have to look at the different types of short-term rentals, obviously, like the party houses where like you don't have a face to the house kind of thing. Those would be completely different from persons on the property who live there all year round, you know, and take care of the property and it being their main source of income too.
By the way, we agree with you 100%. Yeah. Okay, and that the intention wasn't to stop you from doing your business. And it's the proliferation of those that are being
Comments
purchased.
should be directed
just
towards
for
the
that
board,
purpose.
Tarky.
I'm sorry.
Becky, did you have anything? to
No,
say
I
to the
was
board?
just, I apologize. I was just reassuring Peter that it's not his kind of operation that we're concerned about. And we absolutely respect. And the intention of this moratorium was to look at those that are being purchased that are not regulated so people can just buy it, be a business and not be there, and not be even caring about what goes on or available to respond when there is an issue. So those are the things that we're really concerned about. It's not the people behind them.
Anybody else?
I would like to just also say that there are things sometimes that we can't see. And I was thinking of PFAS when you talked about that, because I was just at a conference where it said you should eat no more than one freshwater fish a month now. Now, I'm not saying that has anything to do with Airbnbs, but what it made me think about is our lake water quality. And I'm sure you're very careful with your septic system, but some of the small little systems on our lake were put in the 20s and the 30s, and they've not updated them. So if you have 12 cars and each one didn't drive itself, you may have 24 humans now going into that septic system over a 3-day period, which might be problematic because if we can get 8 inches of rain in 24 hours in 2021, it can happen again. Our wastewater treatment plant in Tully almost breached. So we just have to be thinking down the road that the impact isn't just the party stuff, and it was never intended to be. That wasn't my intention of that. I know that many of us are honorable, and I can tell you as a person that went from 3-day rentals to 1-month rentals, we did just as well. So there are people that don't want to blow in and blow out, and mostly they're families. They're not kids, they're not young people looking for a weekend. So with that said, I also didn't intend to take away a livelihood of a family, but more or less be forward thinking because it could happen. We may get those storms, we may get overburdened septic systems. It's more than just what you might hear or see next door.
Anybody else?
Pete again. I once again recommend looking at the Canadice
I
site
will look it up.
because they directly speak to septic systems and about, I think it was a 4-year pumping of the system, and you have to have it on record kind of thing. So
Should be applicable to anyone.
Absolutely.
Not just-
Absolutely.
Again?
Just one additional comment. I would also suggest looking at the very responsible hosts who are your neighbors and the extensive house rules that are a part of any rental, which we are very proud of and proud to have in place.
And enforce because we're right there as well.
Right.
So it's a
Right.
second level of enforcement.
Anybody else? Kevin?
Yeah, I just got a quick question,
Okay.
but I'm typing. Because I want to look about those inspections, because that's the Department of Health. Boy, you guys are gonna get those county taxes up there for that. So my question to the board would be, is, when you're talking the regulations, you can only regulate your town, but then you're looking at like the org. So my question is, would you look at working, with the town of Homer for that? Because it's kind of ridiculous to have half the lake taken care of. Skinny Atlas, we've seen this in Skinny Atlas Lake. And they would get the associations, they get the towns together, and then they were looking at setting regulations around the lake when you're looking at something like this. So I know it's not you, I got you, but I was just curious if that would be something that you would be pursuing when you're looking at like Lily York.
Possibility. I don't think it'd be good to split a lake in half. We have some regulations on one side, different regulations on the other side.
Well,
Although that's true in Tully,
Yes.
because our south end is Cortland County,
Yeah.
and that's different regulations than Onondaga County, so, yeah.
We'll look into it.
Because they'll just point the finger. They'll point the finger and say, "You're the guys that
You guys
screwed
did
up
that."
our lake." I know it. This is why
Well, if we
this
put
is
the regulations in place, then we can point the finger at the town hall.
Hey, look what it took us to set a taxing district, for crying out loud.
I know.
Anybody else, Nathan? If you ask a question to the board, you can make a comment. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and speaking. We're gonna pay some bills tonight, and then after that, we're gonna go into executive session having to do with personnel issue. 2 personnel issues, actually.
Yes.
And then we'll be adjourned. We need a motion to pay the general fund vouchers.
Boy, hit anybody.
All in favor? Carried.